Make sure it's still recording. So I started creating things when I was around 7 years old. My mum had bought me a camera for, I don't know, maybe my 7th or 8th birthday. And from there, I basically started making Nerf War videos. This was my first real creative endeavour. I'd mount the camera onto the Nerf gun and run around and, pretend to shoot people and make little war videos with my brother. And at the time it seemed, it was like the best thing I'd ever made, which it was for a 7-year-old. Then eventually my creative wings started to stretch a little. Around 13, 14, I got really into mountain biking, and so I bought myself a GoPro. I started making mountain biking edits, watching cycling channels and things like Red Bull on YouTube, and seeing these really well edited, it's like skate videos in a way, but for mountain biking, and that made me want to make something with a GoPro, like fast cuts and action shots and that sort of thing. At the same time, I was also writing. I'd always had a fascination with wanting to tell stories. I always had a strong interest in English and history, and then eventually film as well. Just a natural interest in writing and wanting to tell stories. And then I also had a DSLR, which I kind of would go around and take terrible photos with. But that was essentially, that collective of things was my initial break into the creative world of storytelling and cameras and the sort of thing that I end up doing now. I found a real passion for storytelling and filmmaking through school and sixth form, just studying film studies. I did it at GCSE and then at A-level English history film, and it was at that point that I decided that what I want to do is study film at a university. So I had a little peruse round at several places, and I picked Falmouth. The most difficult part of this stage was probably the conversation with my parents and telling them, hey, I want to do a Mickey Mouse degree. They'd always had their heart set on me doing something like English, the passion for writing and literature, but I wanted to take that into a different medium, a medium that spoke to me more, and that medium was film. So explaining to my dad that I wanted to do a Mickey Mouse degree was not a difficult conversation, but it was a conversation. Eventually he caved. Well, I say he caved. He came round to the idea of me doing it. I think as long as I was happy doing what I wanted to do, and I was happy being creative and fulfilling this journey that I was setting myself upon, then they were happy. So I started university. I started to study film. Met some wonderful people, Lydia, Sam, Duncan, shout out. But I think after a year or so, that first year for us, we were in COVID, everything was a little bit difficult. Finding the motivation to be creative was quite a task in that time. So as we entered our second year, there was definitely, for me at least, a kind of desire to do something that wasn't film related. I think I'd been kind of so discouraged by that previous year that I just wanted to try something new. Obviously I was still doing the course and still enjoying aspects of it. So I bought myself a film camera. I bought myself a little point and shoot. I also found my dad's very old Olympus Ohm 10. It's an SLR camera. And with those two cameras, I started taking film photos, which eventually became the account I coined No Luck, the account I named No Luck. And I was just posting film pictures there. For me, it was quite a nice outlet that was different. It was a nice outlet that was away from film. It was just something for me to discover by myself, kind of work out how a film camera works, what it's like to shoot on film, how it's different from digital photography and filmmaking in general. And I found a real passion for film photography through that. Ultimately, after a few months or so, my good friend Sam sat me down and was like, we should do some stuff together with this No Luck sort of thing. And I'd been noodling on the guitar and bass for a couple months, and I guess he'd picked up on this fact. So he sat me down and locked me in a room with him, and he said, let's make some music together. So this is where my first introduction to making music as well came from. Me and Sam were just kind of messing around, making very weird music, playing with sounds and instruments, and just trying to make something that was, outside of our comfort zones essentially, but wasn't something that we'd heard before or seen elsewhere. We just wanted to experiment, and we ended up making a film. That was one of the first films that we made that was like outside of the course. It was a very strange film, but it was just like a mixture of the music, the photography, filming people, interviewing people, meshing all of these different categories of art forms into one weird experimental mess. One particularly funny thing I do remember about that is the Shutterstock watermarks that we had on some of the photos, because we couldn't be bothered to pay for the license. So from there, I was also introduced to, I don't want to say real music making, but more traditional making of music. And this is where we formed our band Harloft, and we started, writing songs together, different from No Luck in the sense it wasn't experimental. We were writing lyrics. I had an opportunity to write in a way that I hadn't written before. It wasn't script writing or short stories, it was lyrical and poetic. I hadn't really experimented with that, so for me it was quite a nice thing to branch out into. This opportunity to write something lyrical and poetic also gave birth to another opportunity, which was to kind of dip my toes into the world of singing. Something I'd never done before. Like I say, I barely knew how to play the guitar, kind of could play the bass, and I'd just been lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time with the right people who'd let me join this musical collective. And somehow I ended up being a person that sang. And so for a good few months, the middle of summer in Cornwall, it was, an unbelievably beautiful place at the time. Very inspiring to write about and to be basking in this environment. It definitely birthed a lot of inspiration for us. That culminated in our first project, EP, album, LP, whatever you want to call it, Lounge Pop. It's a collection of 7 songs that we put together. Very, how would you describe them?
Summary.
Yeah, summary, but what's a better word? I mean, you can edit this, so I'm just going to basically rip off what Duncan said. These first 7 songs were very interesting for me, working with people in a musical sense, which I'd never done before, to create a piece of art in this form, which I'd never done before. It was all just a very eye-opening experience, and I think it was an eye-opening experience for everyone else involved as well, who was also essentially in the same boat, bar Noah. But yeah, I think tonally these songs were very summery, very vibrant, very poppy, something to put on your summer holidays. So after Lounge Pop, we moved on to our second album. This was in our 3rd year of university, and it was called Red Room. It was in this time that we started to take a more holistic approach towards our image and sort of branding. We took a much larger focus on the marketing and the promo, the world building that came with the album rather than just the album itself. Lounge Pop was a very isolated project, whereas Red Room, like I say, it had this whole world built around it. Within these 10 tracks, there's a pretty clear narrative and there's a pretty clear story that we want to tell, but there is also these little tidbits and whatnots in there that you can find. And it all feeds into really this world and this image. So if you take a look at this time, whilst we were making this album and whilst we were promoting this album, we were sort of branching out a lot more into the visual content. I say content, regrettably. We were basically just making a lot of videos, music videos, lyric videos. We experimented with other sort of marketing promo techniques, the most notable being our sticker campaign. We had printed off hundreds of stickers and plastered them around the town relentlessly. To the point that these stickers were just becoming Falmouth law at this point. They were scattered across the campus, scattered across the town, the pier, the pubs, the toilets, everywhere you could find. Anywhere you would go, you would see several of these stickers. It was a very big part of our brand identity, if you want to call it that. But also in this time, it was when, alongside this visual and video making that we were doing with the music, we started up our production company, Twilight Room Studios, which is where we'd kind of decided that we didn't just want to make stuff for ourselves, we wanted to make stuff for other artists and work with other artists within Falmouth. It gave us a really good opportunity to kind of stretch our arms at making things for other people who, in Falmouth, there's a very big variety of music and bands and projects going on, and so it gave us a really good chance to work with punk artists and indie artists and alternative rock artists. So that was a really good opportunity for us to dig our nails into. So yeah, with Twilight Room, these music videos and these visual projects that we were doing for all these artists, it really set me up personally for what I wanted to do. I think at this point I'd realised that I didn't necessarily want to work so much in film itself, which is what the course really, pushes you to do. But through us, taking out the equipment through the uni and just messing around with what we wanted to do for ourselves, it kind of cleared up in my mind that I wanted to do more creative things geared towards promo and helping to, curate a brand image for a band or an artist, that sort of thing. So yeah, really, Toilet Room really helped me to kind of visualise what I wanted to do with my career, I guess. I was going to go in here for the shot, but it's covered in spider webs, and there's a spider in there, and it's kind of freaking me out, so I'm not going to go in here. So I'm going to stand here instead and tell the rest of the story. Our time at university came to an end. We all went our separate ways, and it was time for us to find real jobs in the real world, which is always a fun thing to do. I am extremely lucky in the sense that I managed to firm myself a job within a month of leaving uni. And this is because the company that I work for reached out to the university and was looking for someone who studied film and was nearby in East London to work in an editing role. And I took the first opportunity I could to take that up. But what I do is I work in advertising. And it's the most interesting part for me is learning to create something that isn't learning to be part of a creative process that isn't just your own. Not to say that I'm a cog in a machine or suggest anything like that, but I'm a piece in a much bigger picture. And I think that's been a real learning curve for me, learning to let go of that control that you have over your own projects and your own personal biases and preferences and opinions. Learning to let go of those in favour of this much larger scale production is what you have to come to terms with working in this industry.
Tom, the other day you said something very interesting, which was you had noticed that the Harloft sticker on the back of your phone, since leaving uni, as time had passed and just due to wear and tear, the white sticker with the original design on it had gone away and it had just become a white square.
Yes.
You said that's kind of emblematic of how everything faded away, but then I took that to mean that what was once the Harloft sticker had now faded away to become a blank canvas for us to paint a new painting on.
A new image?
Yeah, a new image. We could make something new.
I like that.
And I feel like, you've been talking about where you've come from, how you started creating things, where you started from going to uni, trying music, then going into more promotion, and how that led you ultimately to where you are now with your job. But now, do you look at the Harloft, that white square, and do you still think, what do you think now? Do you think it's empty, or do you think there's something to build, it's a blank? Do you see it as opportunity or the end of something?
I see it as both, I think as one thing ends, another thing begins. So as much as this old era of Harloft and this old era of our creativity and our projects and us exploring ideas has come to an end, it breathes life into this new era of us trying different things and exploring other ideas, and it all comes in different waves. I think we've just entered a new era, a new wave, if you will, of creativity.
Thanks for talking me through this, Tom.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, let's go and get some booze.
Yeah, let's rock and roll. It's a blank bloody canvas.